doing, my friends? Afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching, it's all good. Today we are going to talk about a technique I'm sure we all use. A lot of times it's the first technique that we learn when we get into bass fishing. That technique is the Texas rig. Texas rig can kind of be deceiving in the aspect of it's really more the way you rig the bait on the hook. But in this case, we're going to refer to it as a hook, weight, hook, and bait. Okay? And there's the beauty of a Texas rig. And look at that rod glove. I love these things. They protect the rod so well. The beauty of the Texas rig is it's so universal, right? You can do so many different things with it. When we are flipping or pitching, we're typically throwing a Texas rig. You control yourself here, Sean. Flipping a jig. Anyway, we're going to go with the Texas rig. So the requirements for a Texas rig, it's also probably one of the less expensive rigs to fish. Doesn't require a whole lot. Now, what it does require is a weight. All of these are 1/4 ounce weights. That's lead, that's brass, that's tungsten. Now, one thing I will caution you, if you are using a tungsten weight, they will shatter a glass bead on the hook set. So if you want to use a bead, use plastic or a brass bead if they still have those. they used to have them. Or they now make tungsten beads. Okay. So when I use a brass over tungsten, I'm going to use a brass and glass bead if I am doing what they call shaking a worm. Now, I didn't get any glass beads, as some of you may know. I had surgery on Monday. It is now Friday. I can't get in and out of the boat right now. So we're going to pretend there's a glass bead on here. There's my brass weight. Got me a little EWG hook here, and the hook is hook can depend on what you're putting on it. I used to use an EWG almost exclusively when I first started. Now I'll use a worm hook, and I'll show you in just a second here once I tie this double Palomar. You know, the eyesight, even with my glasses on, fluorocarbon is pretty invisible stuff because I couldn't see the tag in there. Okay, trim my tag end down. There you go. This is not per se a Texas rig, but I think a lot of times when people talk about a Texas rig, this is what they're referring to. This bait here is a Zman Goat. Okay, it's Elastic. Floats really, really well. The color is hot craw. Good universal color. So put in to the band, kick it out, follow it up around the hook. Put this over here. Measure where it goes there. Poke it through. Pull it back up. So you just kind of put the tip just in the plastic there, okay? Now, Elastec doesn't work quite as well for this. There we go. It's in there. You can fish, and there's what we have. Okay, pretend there's a bead on it if you want to shake it. The bead is meant for sound. Okay, if I'm flipping this, I'm going to put a peg stop up here because I don't want the weight to separate too far, because it has a tendency to catch on things and then it doesn't fall through. If I'm fishing, say, tossing to the bank or to a hump, then I'm probably going to leave that weight loose. Okay, you can do this with a robo worm. This is a Zman Fatty Z, Fat Z, whatever. And I know it's backwards. I figured out why that is. But here is the other hook. All right, this is what I just call a worm hook. And this is what I would use for the 7-inch robo worm I have here. Same thing, put it in about a 1/4 inch, slide it around, up onto the shoulder there. And the nice thing is, when you got your knot there, that plastic will just go up over the hook eye. Protect your knot, feed your hook in there, and you have a weedless presentation. So when would you want something that floats? Back in the day of brass and glass, shaking was very, very popular. Okay, you just throw your line out. A lot of times I threw it out, kept the boat in or fishing from the bank. So it's a great technique for the bank fisherman. And you let it hit bottom, get your rod tip up, and just kind of shake the slack in the line. And what it would do was make that weight dance on the bead. In essence, calling the fish to come and check it out. It was very, very effective technique on my local water here. Matter of fact, I won't say it's all I did in the beginning, but I will say it's the primary technique. It's a local pond here. They call it a lake. It's a pond, 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. The fishing used to be really good, but I live in a big city, and through COVID, all that kind of stuff got a lot of pressure. They don't want to fill the lake up. They keep the water really low. I think it's kind of hurt the fishing some, plus too many fish probably being taken out, whatever it may be. Anyway, I don't go anymore because now you have to get the boat inspected and they can tell you, no, you can't come in. Welcome to California. So that's where I would fish a shaking rig. It's still a very effective rig and quite honestly, very underutilized. For a rod for doing that technique, 7 foot, this is a heavy, you could do it with this. I really prefer a medium to medium heavy with, say, a fast action. This is a heavy, fast Daiwa Zillion rod. I used to have a lot of rods for this technique. Like I said, I kind of have forgotten about it. Now, other things you can do with a Texas rig. Here's a 734 Powell. That is a medium heavy fast action. Okay, again, very similar action to that 7 foot. And then you can use the Texas rig all the way up to your flipping stick, right? This is a Texas rig. It's meant for punching. It's a 1 1/4 ounce punch weight on there. There you see the bobber stops in front of the weight. So a Texas rig can cover a lot of different things, a lot of different quadrants of the water, and it is honestly, before the Senko, I think it was probably what most of us learned to fish first. And I think sometimes forgotten about the shaking worm. And the reason I picked the goat, and the other worm I would do this with is the Fatty Z, is because they float, right? So the weight's going to be on the bottom and you're shaking it. And I don't know if you can hear that. This is an old gambler weight. It's a gambler screw-in. And it's got a built-in rattle. One time we were really, really popular with us for flipping. Anyway, the Elastec stuff's gonna float. I used to use a robo worm. It was wasn't this robo worm. It was flatter. I called it a shaking worm. I believe they still make them. If they do, I'll put it in the description so you can see what they are. That was my favorite worm for this technique. Caught a ton of fish. The lake I used to fish was Calero, and we called the worm Calero Candy. Did some club tournaments out there, and I won both of them that we fished with pretty good bags. It was just a deadly way to catch them, and the fish would come to it. You didn't have to land right on them. They would come to it back in the day. And I had a friend that did it on the Delta and other places, and it worked well there too for numbers, not necessarily for size, but anyway. So when would I use the screw-in weight? Flipping and pitching to targets. Nowadays we peg it, right? Just put your peg it in front of the weight. You can put it up a little bit, doesn't have to hold it tight, just close so that it doesn't create a gap that can catch onto that. Creature baits, thicker baits, I go with EWG. Narrower baits like a worm, I go with the standard worm hook. Okay, this is a 1/0. This is a 3/0. Depending on the size of the bait, you can go all the way up to a 5/0. Most of the time I'm using between a 3 and a 5. Line size can vary anywhere from 10-pound test all the way up to 25-pound test, depending on what you're doing with the shaking rig. Because we were throwing it out in open water, a lot of times I used 10-pound test, and if it was windy, the wind didn't catch it quite as much. It was a little easier to keep in place. And you just shake it, and when the fish would eat it, you just let them load. It'll start to load. They'll pick it up. They start swimming off with it. Your rod starts to load. You reel down and you set. Very effective technique. Again, it's what most of us learned on back in the old days. I don't know today with all the forward-facing sonar, the new baits, Senkos, all that kind of stuff. Maybe a Senko is what people learn with. But the power of the Texas rig was real. I still use it a lot, flipping, pitching, throwing to rock piles. You Carolina rig, your Texas rig in the bait, it's not, this is what I refer to the weight down on the bait when I'm talking about a Texas rig. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. We'll see you on the next one. Peace out.